Good evening. A long line of mourners said goodbye to Detroit's Jackie Wilson today. They gathered in the church where he had started out. Mr. Excitement, who'd earned fame and fortune as he traveled far and wide, came home to be buried. Bob Bennett was there.
Jackie Leroy Sonny Wilson came home today to be buried. Little had been heard about him the last few years, but he was one of the biggest name entertainers of the late 50s and early 60s, the era often called prehistoric rock and roll. Wilson, who suffered a disabling stroke in 1975, died 1 week ago. He was 49. It is fitting that this church was packed to the rafters today. Jackie Wilson learned to sing in this very church as a member of the choir. Within a few years, he was a performer on stage, and he traveled all over the country performing to standing room only audiences. He was dubbed Mr. Excitement, and that was his style. A frantic, moaning, shouting singer who tore off his coat while performing, as hundreds of female fans swooned. He was a big name in Detroit. His family and friends wept. For them, the minister had a message.
And what we're doing is as natural as being born. We cannot gloss over it. We're here to say goodbye.
Ironically, in death, there's renewed interest in Jackie Wilson. An East Side record store owner who knew him before he was a star is selling this album. Many of the songs are written by Berry Gordy Jr. With the profits, Gordy started the Motown record company. It could not have happened without Jackie Wilson's voice.
Give him credit for keeping rock and roll alive. Along with he and Elvis Presley, they were the first two to come on the stage, sing and dance.
Those who started out with Wilson were the ones who carried the casket from the church.
The story here is really not the amount of people that came up in limos and, you know, what have you. I mean, if you look around, you'll see people with gym shoes on, man, and, I mean, this is real love, you know.
All the years that I spent with Jackie Wilson, Sam Cooke, and all the fellas on the road, it's something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. In fact, it will probably help me go on.
There's a special tinge of sadness in Jackie Wilson's passing. The company he helped pioneer moved from Detroit to the West Coast years ago. The Fox Theater, where he first found fame, is closed except for special events. But Jackie Wilson's music lives on.
In my day, he was our Michael Jackson, and I followed him wherever he went.
Bob Bennett, News 4 Detroit.
Michael Jackson fans can rest a little easier. The superstar was unexpectedly released from Broughton Memorial Hospital in Los Angeles this afternoon. Jackson had suffered second and third degree burns to the back of his head last night during the filming of a glittery TV commercial. A hospital spokesman said today's release came because Jackson is apparently well enough to go home. Doctors earlier had said that he'd be hospitalized for several days. Deborah.
Jackson is out of the hospital tonight. He was unexpectedly released. Earlier, doctors were saying Jackson would have to stay in the hospital for several days. The 25-year-old star was hurt last night when fireworks being used in the filming of a TV commercial ignited his hair. Jackson suffered second and third degree burns to his scalp, and he may need reconstructive surgery. Rhythm and blues star Jackie Wilson was buried today in Detroit. We get the story from Kay Lowry.
Than I've ever been lifted before. Let's keep it up. Quench my desire.
That was Jackie Wilson doing one of his best-known hits, Higher and Higher, taken from the album Jackie Wilson, Standing Room Only. There was less than standing room in Detroit's Russell Street Baptist Church this afternoon. At least 800 people came to say goodbye to the rhythm and blues singer known as Mr. Excitement. Some of these people grew up with Jack Leroy Wilson on Detroit's East Side. He was baptized in this very church. He was one of Detroit's favorite musical sons. Wilson began recording in the 1950s, but his career was cut short 8 years ago. He suffered a heart attack on stage, went into a coma, and never regained consciousness.
His music and his life has brought us together in a unique way. And try as we might, this crowd will never be together again. My Lord, what a day you have made.
Although emotional, this service was called a celebration of Jackie Wilson's life.
Jackie Wilson, dead at age 49.
expected to be in the thousands of dollars. Famous singer Michael Jackson was unexpectedly released from a Los Angeles hospital today. Jackson was rushed to a hospital last night after suffering second and third-degree burns. He had been doing a scene for a Pepsi commercial when a special effects smoke bomb apparently misfired and set his hair ablaze. Witnesses said the 25-year-old entertainer, who was picked up a record number of Grammy nominations, took off his jacket without breaking stride and tried to put out the fire. Hospital spokesman says today's surprise release came because Jackson appears to be well enough to go home. Earlier, doctors had said that the star would be in the hospital for several days.
A local singer who reached the top of the music charts in the early 60s was laid to rest today in Detroit. Jackie Wilson, known as Mr. Excitement at the peak of his career, died last week. He'd been suffering from a heart attack that left him an invalid for the last 8 years. Family, friends, and hundreds of fans crowded a church in the East Side neighborhood where Wilson grew up to pay their last respects. Channel 7's Buzz Luttrell has the story.
Music, his friends say, was Jackie Wilson's life. And most appropriately, the music dominated funeral services for the man many entertainment critics say was the best pure vocalist of his generation.
This life started out nearly 50 years ago in this community. Walked these dusty streets, talked that talk, stood on the corners, hung out. My, what a day you have made.
Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops, a pallbearer today, said Jackie never forgot where he came from. And whenever he came home, Stubbs said, to this very neighborhood where services were held today, Jackie made sure everybody had a good time. And despite his 8-year absence, the church overflowed with those who came to say thanks one more time and goodbye. Jackie Wilson's body will rest now in West Lawn Cemetery. But those who know his music say his voice will never rest, in a sense, as long as there's some way to play the songs that he made famous, that made him known as Mr. Excitement. Wilson was 49 years old when he died on January 21st. In Detroit, Buzz Luttrell, Channel 7 Action News reporting.